Welcome back to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba, your host. Thanks for joining us. All right, I've got Peter Scott, author and futurist, on the show. Human Cusp. All right, Peter, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me back, Michael.
My pleasure. All right, your resume reads like Monty Python punchline. I love that lead in. Give our audience, the people that haven't met you yet, some background on you, and then let's talk about these points that you brought up that are really hit home with me.
Sure. Well, I started out with a computer science degree from Cambridge, England, and then I moved to the United States to work for NASA. I seem to be collecting citizenships, and I spend a lot of time working in IT and still do. And I developed a parallel career in coaching because I realized that the human element was something that played a big part in any kind of project, including IT, and yet IT professionals tended to have a blind spot about that, and yet it was something that affected the efficiency and effectiveness of their development. And I have, in recent years, become concerned about the future of society in the face of exponential technology growth, which carries enormous potential for huge benefits, the kind that I don't want to slow up in the slightest, but it's also a very volatile thing. Volatility is a concept that's not unfamiliar to your listeners, and carries the potential for huge risks if we don't get it right. And this became important to me because I have children. They're 8 and 4 now, and their future is what impels me to do things that otherwise a more or less introverted nerd wouldn't do, like speaking out about this in public.
Talk to me about the hot points that hit you, that caused you to go down this path.
Right. So exponential growth is something that just the human brain isn't wired to do. There are lots of examples about this going back even thousands of years. And I see this in particular every time I open a financial projection from the newsletters and other things that I subscribe to. I can guarantee that whatever their projection is for the future of some stock or exchange or other, it's going to be a straight line drawn out from the last few months. And yet, that doesn't get you where you need to go in technology, because exponential growth is something that just catches you and everyone unawares. And it's that idea that we will see changes that, the classic is you could take someone from the Roman Empire and plug them into society in the year 1800, and they would get along fine. It hadn't been that much change, frankly. You take someone from that 200 years ago and you plug them in 20 years ago with your time machine. Now there's a huge difference. They're really going to be dislocated. The whole idea of an information network, it just takes a huge amount of explaining. Well, the idea that very soon we will see in 2 years what used to take 20 years of progress is really arresting, and we need to focus on the consequences of that.
I agree. Don't you think that we're going to have a new generation of retooling, meaning mental retooling, as we go forward in order to not have a huge poverty gap between those that know and those that don't?
Right. And I think that a lot of the most optimistic projections for how this technology will be used gloss over the economic realities. And the way I illustrate this is that you could go back, say, imagine that you've taken a time trip back to the turn of the last century, 1900 and something, and you're telling people, I am from the future, and we've got all this incredible stuff, computers that can answer any question in the blink of an eye, electric engines, planes, space travel, and medicine like you wouldn't believe. And that person that you were talking to would say, wow, that's amazing. There must be no one in your world who is sicker than they need to be, who is poor or hungry. And then that's where it would get embarrassing, right?
Right.
Because that's not the case as much as it could be. And so we tend to project when we look into the future that the dividends of these things will be distributed equitably, whereas that is not our future, and it will lead, not our practice, and it will lead to some difficult socioeconomic realities. This is why, for instance, Bill Gates proposes a robot tax. What else might you do?
Right. Okay. Let's move on, because there's so much to talk about and then so little time. All right. One of the things that you want to bring out in today, and it really piqued my interest, I hadn't heard about it. How do you handle harassment complaints against employees with AI? I'm a little confused on this, but it's an intriguing statement. Bring that up.
Well, harassment is a big deal for modern companies, large enterprises, because of the lawsuit potential, particularly for anyone with deep pockets. And yet harassment can be due to subconscious, unconscious causes. So companies spend a lot of effort trying to work that out of their processes, and yet we find that it's still there. In various studies, we can see that there's still harassment or bias, for instance, in the hiring process, or harassment occurring through interactions. We have the potential for creating AI that doesn't have that. It might also reflect our own unconscious biases, but if we design it consciously, then we have the chance of it being free of that. And we've already seen the effects of that in hiring, where it doesn't replicate unconscious hiring biases.
Got it. Peter,
it does. It's a different story.
I get it. I'm sorry that we have to stop right now, because I want to talk to you about competition and so many other things. Let me extend an invitation to come back, and we'll finish our conversation, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Peter Scott, author and futurist, humancusp.com. You've been listening to CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining.